guys. So for today, I have my group with me, and we'll be talking about women's health in detention centers, in ICE, specifically ICE detention centers. And we're going to be talking about reproductive health, mental health, as well as maternal health. And for many years, the U.S. government has been criticized for human right violations against women and girls, and the effects of this. And so we're going to be talking about the effects that it has on women and girls. And so I'm going to go ahead and just give a brief introduction. So, for reproductive health, unfortunately, for many immigrants that are in the detainment centers, there are a lot of violations when it comes to reproductive health, just like, unsanitized, unsanit- unsanitized areas, as well as unauthorized procedures are being done on these women, as well as mental health. When it comes to mental health of these women, we have endured who have endured psychological abuse. Unfortunately, the likely of this happening are to the women part of the LGBTQ plus community, and we'll also dive down into that. And lastly, our last topic today that we'll be talking about is maternal health. And we'll be just talking about the effects of separation of families and mothers from their children, as well as being actively handcuffed during other things that we'll dive down deeper into. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Rebecca. So take it away. Oh, no, I mean,
Liz.
cut. Liz. Well, I'm gonna pass the mic on to Liz. Great.
Hey, y'all. So, what I found about the dangerous procedures that were being done in ICE detention centers, one specifically, was a detention center in Georgia, is ICDC, which stands for Irwin County Detention Center, is under investigation after multiple immigrant women that are being detained there. Re- ooh, they report they reported under aggressive gynecological procedures, often seen as dangerous. Further investigation would discover that many of the procedures could have been altogether avoided and deemed unnecessary. These dangerous procedures left the vulnerable women feeling violated and confused due to the lack of information that was given to them about what would be done to them. Dr. AM, who performed many of these procedures, had a previous history of malpractice and was under investigation for fraud, yet he was still hired by ICE. Dr. AM is not only is not the only one. Neither. Oops, sorry. Dr. AM is not the only one, and neither is ICE, the facility ICDC. U.S. Detention centers have overall had numerous sexual abuse allegations brought up against their employees and staff. ICE states that it has a zero tolerance policy on sexual abuse, yet there are many cases that are never investigated. This shows the many loopholes within a broken system, the oversight of healthcare practices in their facilities, and the lack of accountability for these institutions. I want to know or bring up the conversation as far as why is it less important and acceptable for immigrant women that are secluded with few resources to be subjected to environments where they must also now worry about sexual abuse and malpractice.
Um, Hi, Liz. I'm Amira. I can answer that. I don't think it's less important or acceptable to be subjected to the sexual abuse and malpractice, but I think it's an issue of being often overlooked due to the systemic inequalities and lack of accountability. Immigrant women, especially those who are undocumented or in detention centers, are among the most vulnerable in the populations, and they lack legal protection, language barriers, limited access to resources, And then the fear of deportation makes them an easy target and less likely to report the abuse. And this marginalization can create environments where sexual abuse and malpractice are allowed to persist without any consequences. Not because it's acceptable, but because these women are not seen or treated as a priority by the systems that are meant to protect them. And it really reflects deep rooted institutional neglect and failure to uphold basic human rights.
Right. I also wanted to ask, what further measures do you think that should be taken place as far as, because we do have these programs in place, but yet it's not enough.
I think the first step we have to do is actually just investigate all these claims that these women are doing, because at the end of the day you can put a bunch of programs in place, but if you have people in those programs that do not respect it, nor do they respect the women that these programs are helping, it's just you're gonna keep having the same issue. You're gonna have doctors and nurses or whoever is in these ICE detention centers continue to violate these human rights, you know? So I think the first step is to, one, investigate and also look, okay, why are these programs not working? Is it because we have bad people and people who are misusing the system? Or is it actually the program that's not helping these women? I think that's one of the things that we could do. Anybody would like to add?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. I also wanted to pass it along to Rebecca, who will be speaking about mental health.
I forgot to make my questions. I'll make it while everyone else is talking.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
Or we can move to me and Michelle and give you time.
Mhm.
Okay.
You
And then we
record
can cut this.
We'll
Okay,
cut this part out,
so-
don't worry.
Yeah, Michelle, I'll go first.
Wait.
Yeah.
Liz?
Okay.
Liz, can you
So-
reintroduce it?
Hi, my name is Amira, and I wanted to talk about
Time out.
diving.
Said timeout.
Liz, can you reintroduce your passing the mic to Michelle and Amira so we can have that part in the edit? Thank you. So it doesn't
Yeah,
seem weird.
and also did that beginning even make sense? Because as I was reading it, I was like, what the hell am I writing?
No, you're good. It makes sense.
I was
Just keep
like, I
going.
don't know if half of it. Okay, cool. I was
Yeah,
like,
you
I don't
keep
know if
going.
this is even edible. Okay. So it's gonna be to Michelle and Amira.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, passing along the mic to Amira and Michelle, who will be speaking about. What are you guys gonna be talking about? Sorry.
Maternal health.
Maternal health.
Yes. So hi, I'm Amira, and today Michelle and I are going to be diving deep into the aspects of immigration and the treatment of pregnant women in detention. And I want to begin by talking about an article from the Health Rights in the Balance, the case against prenatal shackling of women. And in the study, the authors shine a light on the devastating medical and psychological consequences of shackling pregnant individuals. And they document how restraints, whether handcuffs, leg irons, or waist chains, interfere with labor and delivery. And this can increase the risk of falls and make medical assessments nearly impossible. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the World Health Organization both call it inhumane, cruel, and medically dangerous. But it's not just physical damage. Shackling during one of the most vulnerable moments in a person's life is profoundly demeaning. It traumatizes you and it can hinder the crucial early moments of mother and infant bonding and can leave lasting mental scars. Another study found that between 2017 and 2018, 18 pregnant women miscarried while on the custody of ICE, and that's nearly double the year before. And these aren't just statistics, they're lives affected by a system that sees detention and control before it sees care or humanity. What's more alarming is that these women were shackled around their stomach while being transported, and others face serious delays in getting medical help, even when they were in crisis. And so I want to ask you guys, what does it say about our society when the health and dignity of pregnant women is compromised in the name of immigration enforcement.
Wow, that was deep. Especially with this all being a room majority women, I think hearing that our other women and sisters are going through this is just one sad. But I also just want to talk about. Wait, what was your question? I rambled.
How does it reflect on our society as a society?
Thank you. I think it just really shows that Latin women, especially undocumented women, are at the bottom of the totem pole, at the bottom of the barrel, always getting the leftover scraps, and it just, especially like for me, all the articles that I was finding about this topic were really recent, actually, all done within 2024 or 2023, even as early as May of this year. I found articles, and it's just the beginning of this administration. The administration has only been in office and it's already doubled. And I know 2024 last year was probably the 18 women. So that even though that was under Biden's administration, I don't think that's going to slow down under Trump. If anything, I think that's going to increase, and that just shows where we are in society.
Yes, thank you for that, Giselle. And I wanted to mention one last thing is that sometimes when the women are released, they're have to pay bond amounts of like 1,500 or more, and that's an amount that they don't have. So yeah, it puts even more pressure and mental strain on them. And I'm gonna pass the mic to Michelle, and then after we are both gonna discuss how we believe abolishing this is the best way forward.
Okay, thank you, Amira, for introducing maternal health. So I just wanted to introduce policies, and then I wanted to give a little bit of anecdotal evidence from some of these pregnant women who have been in these detention centers. So I wanted to introduce one of the policies that actually allows for the shackling of pregnant women in these detention centers. And the next two quotes I'm going to provide are from Nora Ellman's article from CAP. So one of the first key policies that dictate the treatment of pregnant women in immigration detention centers is PBNDS 2011. And these are standards that guide healthcare for detained women at ICE facilities. And PBNDS 2011 section on women's healthcare contains standards that pregnant women in custody have access to pregnancy services, including routine or specialized prenatal care, pregnancy testing, comprehensive counseling, and assistive postpartum follow-up, lactation services, and abortion services. But as we all know, most of these services aren't provided to them. And she actually shares how only 20% of ICE facilities operate under the most up-to-date PBNDS 2011, and how only 65% of adult detention centers are actually contractually bound by these set of standards. So that means that 35% of these detention centers are actually contractually bounded to follow these standards, which I found was really surprising, because it basically like allows these to get off and disregard these standards for pregnant women, and ultimately leads to them being abused and face these ill treatments such as shackling. And then the next policy I also want to talk about, which is from the Nora Ellman article, is the 2017 presumption of release policy reversal. And this reverses the 2016 policy, which would previously release pregnant women from mandatory detention if they didn't demonstrate extraordinary circumstances. So now basically pregnant women are detained no matter the situation, and they aren't given this extraordinary circumstance allowed to leave, if that makes sense. And overall, policies like the PBNDS 2011, how these some detention centers aren't contractually bound to follow these standards, creates for a lack of uniformity, and it ends up affecting these pregnant women because they could go to one center, which allows for them to get x-rays, ultrasounds, and routine meals, and then they could go to like another detention center, which doesn't allow for these services. So it ends up messing with their pregnancy, because overall they're getting one type of treatment in this center, and then they go get transferred to another center and get horrible treatment. And then I actually wanted to allow any feedback about the thoughts of the policies, if any of you guys had any thoughts on this lack of uniformity. If not, I could keep on going, and you guys could react to the anecdotal evidence if that makes more sense. Okay, so from the Nora Ellman article, I want to provide one. So there was a story of Olivia, a 24-year-old detained at 7 months pregnant, was shackled, experienced severe pain for days that was ignored or dismissed, and was neglected for hours when she went into premature labor, ultimately delivering a baby with numerous serious medical issues. And in the second article from Physician for Human Care, we learned that one woman was told at the detention facility center that this is not a hospital and that agents weren't doctors when she complained of bleeding during the 4th month of her pregnancy.
Wow. I want to chime in, Michelle, and just say that it's outrageous that we live in a country where we're supposed to have, you know, a good medical treatment, but because these women are not citizens, they're completely seen as not human. And the fact that they have to suffer through this while being pregnant, and the fact that it affects them mentally, physically, in all ways, it's just, my heart goes out for them. Yeah. So, and we're gonna talk about why. Yeah, we definitely believe that pregnant women should not be shackled or detained at all.
No, that was a heavy testimonial from one of the women in um, the ICE detention centers. Really made me. It's just heartbreaking and discerning and very just sad just to hear this.
Yeah, I have to agree. And also, putting them in those positions, it's also risking their lives. It's kind of like what Amira said is how they're not even seen as human at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I also agree with all of you guys. It's just, if you put it into perspective, like, you couldn't even imagine like your own mother going through this, or like your grandmothers, and to think that we live in a country where like we promote like healthcare as such, like a big part of our community, and we're not able to provide that for people just because of citizenship. And it's just like the underlying like facts and like policies like within like just pregnant women and mothers in detention centers, it's like disgusting. It's dehumanizing to think that we even have facilities like that just like down the street or just a state away. And so it's just hard to even think that like not many people are even informed and like aware about what's going on.
Yeah.
Especially in a country where we have the resources to give healthcare to these women. We have the resources. We have the things that are needed to provide at least a decent stay, you know. And we can go into the political view on immigrants, but that's not why we're here. But at the end of the day, every human deserves basic needs and deserves to be treated equally. And no matter if you are a citizen or not, you should not be looked else. You should not be looked at a different way, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just super sad and like disheartening, because I also was reading up on the same article by Nora Ellman, how even one woman was saying how she was told to get an MRI scan, or it was either that or an X-ray machine, and the X-ray machine, like it clearly stated outside of it, do not use for pregnant women. So it was crazy that she was being instructed to go in there when it advised not to. So it's just sad to see how they dehumanize these pregnant women at these detention centers.
Especially like all the extra policies, they're all aimed towards women too. Like there's a bunch of little things, little policies that strictly only affect women, and it's just really sad just to see how our society view women.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
were you gonna talk about abolition, or were you gonna continue with that?
I was gonna ask questions, but I feel like we covered it, because I was gonna ask who benefits from lack of uniform policies, and then I was gonna ask why do you think the media covers this side. But I feel like we kind of talked about it, so we could move on to abolition if you want.
Okay, and because time too, I think.
Yeah.
So okay, let me say a couple. Yeah. So we also want to talk about abolition and how that comes into play into this. So abolition is not just about tearing down; it's about rebuilding. And abolitionists argue that immigration detention should not exist at all, and that we should be investing in community-based care support system, and not jails and cages for women who are already suffering. And the practice of abolition intersects with the fight against criminalization of immigration, and we believe that abolition calls for a closure of detention facilities, the elimination of ICE practices, and the creation of alternative systems, which I believe Christopher will be speaking about when he closes, because pregnant women should be protected as they are the most vulnerable. And I don't know if you have anything else to add on in regards to that, Michelle.
Yeah, similar to you, I found that Nora Elman, the author I was reading on for the CAP article, she had suggested that we just remove entirely the presumption of reversal, like not to basically not try to reverse that, but just entirely not detain these women. And instead, like how you mentioned, refer to community-based support systems to help them get the healthcare they need throughout their pregnancy and ensure that they and their baby are healthy, and just basically use Mariam Kaba's abolition guidelines, where we just, rather than use an exploitative system, we just use community support. So yeah, kind of similar.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to pass it over to Becca, who's going to talk about the mental health aspect.
Thank you. So, as they said, I'm going to be talking about the mental health. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay, let me restart. So like they said, I'm going to be diving into how immigration detention centers take a heavy toll on mental health of not only women, but also the girls that are practically raised and like brought up within these detention centers, and just generally how these detention centers approach mental health needs. Unsurprisingly, these centers don't have any resources or staff to provide proper mental health care, and instead they respond with punishment rather than support for these women. And just to think back to this, probably these women and girls are many of who already survived abuse and trauma from maybe their home countries or just life here in America. And these detention centers deepen those scars and leave lasting impacts. And so my first form of evidence is from a news article, which was actually updated on March 24th of this year. And it was based in Miami, Florida, at the Chrome North Processing Center, which is operated by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And typically this facility is reserved for men only and not women. So first and foremost, women shouldn't even be in this facility. But the article had basically talked about a woman who wrote to her husband about her experience, and from point blank of getting arrested to traveling to this detention center. And she had quoted that these women had experienced or observed women being denied timely medical and sanitary care. One witnessed a cellmate wait 12 hours to receive 2 sanitary napkins while she was on her period. She said that the treatment felt like nobody cares and that everyone acts as if these women are animals in cages, and that they were just neglected the entire time that they were there. And the guards who worked at this facility told her that if she wanted anything at all regarding medical care, mental health care, food, water, the restroom, that she had to pretend that she had a seizure and fall down. And so I just wanted to use this as just background and just an understanding of like the neglect that these women are already facing, that's not even pertain to their mental health resources, and that it's disgusting maltreatment that you can even think that people, not even just women, but also children who are in these facilities that are going through this. Basically that's that. Like, how are we expected to understand that these women are going to receive mental health care if they're not even receiving basic care? And so to start off my discussion, I wanted to know, like, how do you think issues like motherhood, pregnancy, and separation from their children impact their mental health for these incarcerated women?
Hi, Rebecca. So I think that it could be like one of the most damaging experiences to be separated from your children or to be pregnant and not get any help. I feel like it would cause post traumatic stress disorder and depression. The distress of not knowing where your children are or not being able to be in contact. I feel like it can trigger intense feelings of powerlessness and guilt. And then for pregnant women, the stress of being detained paired with like no care and the possibility of giving birth while being shackled can lead to uh, prenatal depression and anxiety as well. And then the psychological toll can resemble that of birth trauma or pregnancy loss. And I think it's just like lifelong psychological distress that is placed on these women, that it's something they can never forget. It's something they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Right, because how do you recover from that? You know, it's like ripping your heart away, and you not knowing anything about your child, and again to repeat what Amira had said, as far as you don't even know where they're at. You don't know if they're alive or how they're being treated. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, and pregnancy is supposed to be like a beautiful experience that a mother has and that a woman has, and motherhood is just supposed to be something great that you're able to accomplish, and these women can't even experience that at all.
Right.
Yeah. So I have this other article from American Progress, and basically, immigration centers are not only incapable of providing adequate women's health care, but they also inflict damage on the health of women and girls by denying services, neglecting medical needs, and creating new trauma. And so, my next story that I'm going to share is that the article mentions a transgender woman from Honduras, and she was placed in solitary confinement for disciplinary reasons because she later tried to commit suicide. And so rather than getting or receiving any mental health care, they punished her for having mental health problems and put her in solitary confinement for up to 2 weeks. And she was placed on suicide watch instead of getting compassionate mental health services, and then she was moved to a different detention center and was once again placed in solitary confinement for her mental health problems. And currently right now she's out of detention, but she still faces disorientation and sleep difficulties because she wasn't treated properly at all. Christopher, did you raise your hand?
I didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. But yeah, do you guys have any thoughts? I can move on, but
No,
I just saw
I would like to also add on to this. You know, when I was also doing research for the introduction, came across this article that talks about how the LGBTQ people represented is approximately 0.14%. But in 2017, they account for 12% of sexual abuse and assault in victim detainment centers. So that just shows they're a very small population within the detainment centers, and yet they have probably one of the highest rates of assault. And as well as not only are they not being respected, but as well as being dead named, as well as being put in detention center where these men are being held. So obviously when that happens, unfortunately these women do get sexually assaulted when they're surrounded by these men as well as the officers. And they go on to say, just talking about the high rates of sexual assault and trauma, being regularly subjected to humiliating and abusive strip search by male guards, not receiving necessary medical service such as hormone replacement therapies, and again being raped by male guards while housed in solitary confinement. And that is just one of the articles that I've found, and I think that's something that needs to be brought up because at the end of the day, transgender women are women.
Thank you so much for sharing. But yeah, I feel like these two examples are really important to understand that detention centers need to be better prepared for mental health needs, offering strong trauma-informed care that takes into account of gender, culture, and language, making sure that every woman and girl in these facilities gets the support that truly fits their experiences and their backgrounds prior or during their experience in detention centers. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on. But all people in detention centers, and particularly women and girls, need trauma-informed care that acknowledges their lived experiences and supporting their mental well-being. And then, as defined by the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the trauma-informed model of care, and I quote, emphasizes the need for behavioral health practitioners and organizations to recognize the prevalent and pervasive impact of trauma on the lives of people they serve and the development of trauma-sensitive or trauma-responsive services. These women and girls require mental health services that are carefully tailored to their distinct needs. This includes specialized care for pregnant individuals, thoughtful consideration of past trauma and mental health histories, and a clear commitment to ensuring that they're not penalized for experiencing their mental illnesses. I think you had already mentioned it, Giselle, but I was going to ask if you think that women should be screened for mental health issues upon entry into detention centers and what criteria should be used.
I definitely think, and you guys can chime in as well, that I think women should be screened for mental health as well with if they are come out positive with some mental health problems. I don't want to use problems, but mental health issues. Um, there should be a facility, an ICE detention center specifically for these women and even men. I know men are not in this topic, but just mental health in general. I think there needs to be a separate detention center to deal with their needs because they're very different from someone that does not suffer from these illnesses, and so I think that's one way to approach this.
Well, that was
Yeah, I feel like there should be a. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go chime in.
Yeah, I feel like there should be a pre-entry screening because at the end of the day, I feel like people deserve a treatment tailored to themselves. I think it's just sad how these detention centers are basically running like prisons, how they're throwing people in solitary confinement, and yeah, I think they just deserve their own tailored treatment and get the help that they need.
If that's everybody, that was my ending question for my subtopic. So thank you for being so active. I guess our next person is going to be Christopher, and he'll be closing off all, I guess, our subtopics and just informing of us of some solutions that can happen.
So I'm talking about the solutions. I'm sorry for being pretty fucking nervous right now. So I think that one solution in terms of maternal health would obviously be to ban shackling of pregnant women in immigration custody because it poses a very big exceptional risk to their health. Um, back in November 2023, there was actually a Senate bill introduced called the Stop Shackling and Detaining Pregnant Women Act, which was meant to end the shackling. Right now, the bill is currently stuck in judicial limbo. With the Trump administration, I don't think that it's going to be passing anytime soon. But that's just one solution there. Another solution that I note is enforce evidence-based standards for care in immigration custody, and also I would also like to see Congress trying to oversee these detention centers because I think the problem, in my opinion, is that the U.S. government tends to hold a very laissez-faire or hands-off approach when it comes to monitoring these facilities, and I feel like that the government has a role in maintaining the safety of the people within the country. I think another solution that I have is to essentially better oversight detention centers by ICE and the DA and the Department of Homeland Security. I would also hope that at some point the Second Chance Act could apply also to the Department of Homeland Security, not just the Department of Justice. Also, for potential solutions for reproductive autonomy, I feel like that the overturning of Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization would be a good step in towards reproductive autonomy, because what that Supreme Court decision it made abortion rights not protected by the Constitution, which means that states, especially conservative ones, can pass laws that would either heavily restrict or ban it. And this poses a huge problem if you're an immigrant detained in states like Texas and Louisiana, because since those states have very strict guidelines for reproductive autonomy, it would mean that your chances of getting access to reproductive care would be heavily restricted, if you can even get it at all. So I think the overturning of Dobbs v. Jackson would be a good idea. I also believe that another solution would be to overturn I think a lot of people don't know about what the Hyde Amendment is. The Hyde Amendment essentially prevents federal funds from being used to pay for abortion, except for cases of rape and incest, and if it poses a threat to the life of a woman. I feel like that abortion should be easily accessible to anyone, regardless if you are a citizen or not. I feel like it should be a basic right. Now, for mental health, I think a potential solution I have here is that we need to end the detention of people with mental health issues and survivors of trauma, except under extraordinary circumstances. Another solution that I have here is to enforce the total ban of solitary confinement in immigration custody for punitive, protective, and mental health reasons. It's especially because solitary confinement, which is known for its isolating nature, aka little to no human contact, how most cells are often small and cramped, have little to no natural lighting, it has been shown to cause permanent mental trauma and damage to those who are survivors of it. I would also love to see the enforcement of provisions to make sure detained immigrants have access to mental health services. Now, I feel like that a lot of what I said all hinges on the government, because I feel like the government has a role in overseeing the health and safety of everyone in the country, regardless if you're a citizen or not. So one of my questions is, do you believe the government has a role to provide the necessities like healthcare and human rights to those that are in the country, citizens or not?
I can chime in, Christopher. I thank you so much for that input on the solutions. I think it was really well done. I want to say that yes, the government does have. They need to protect citizens and not citizens, but I think that's something that we can do. Like you mentioned, the Stop Shackling and Detain Pregnant Women Act. I think something that we can do while we kind of wait to see like a bill like this will pass is like contact our representatives, like our U.S. senators and representatives, to tell them that we support the bill. We can partner with like Human Rights Watch, National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, which is some advocacy groups. We can use social media to raise awareness, and we can educate our community, and then also keep track of the bill. So I think it is both the government and us. We have a responsibility together, to ensure that not only citizens but people who are immigrants, that they have the proper care, whether they're detained or not.
That actually kind of ties into my second question. I do know that as how the U.S. government is structured and its electoral system, it practically means that unless if you're a part of the Democratic or Republican Party, the other parties essentially have zero chance in actually winning seats in the House or the Senate. I think that our electoral system has caused a lot of Americans to be exhausted with the two-party system, which to be honest, I am too. I feel like this isn't much of a controversial opinion. But I still need to ask this with the 2026 to 2028 elections coming up very soon. I know that Americans are exhausted of the two-party system, but would you still be willing to, let's say, go out to vote, go out to protest against the Trump administration, to call your representatives, etc.?
Do you mean like calling them out on the protest, or like actually calling them and saying, "Hey, I don't like your policies, even though you're representing me"? Is that what you mean, Chris? Stepher?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of us have lost faith within our policymakers and our representatives, especially with either half of them being on Trump. I'm gonna just say maybe they've been on Trump's payroll, or even they're just pecking booty to, politer words of Trump. And also, like, if you are against Trump, the way they're just stonewalling them is also just not helpful to this country. So I do think the two-party system is hurting us in a negative way now. I think it was working at one point, and now I think the two parties, they say they're different, but they're really not. They're practically the same. They both serve the rich. One just slightly a little bit more liberal, the one just favors rich white people. So, pick your poison. So I think with that being said, I think it's time. It would be nice to actually see a change, and even seeing a third party into, what do you call, like, a third party into a senator or representative seat. Does anybody have anything else to add? Hold on.
Christopher, was that the last of your closing statement?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Perfect. Yeah, that was really well done. Thank you for that, Christopher. And I think, yeah, Giselle, if you want to close us out, I think it's good to have this discussion together and talk about this and inform others. Yeah.
With that being said, I think we had a great discussion. I think we learned a lot ourselves, and I'm excited to put this out online, honestly, because I think this is a very informative and very important topic that's not being talked enough. I think it's being overlooked, especially because it affects women and also transgender women. So I feel like that is another reason why it does not get put out in the public news. With that being said, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate y'all and hope to see you guys next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.